Welcome to another exciting edition of Plank of the Week as we try and wend our way through lockdowns, shutdowns, tiers 1, 2, 3. We don't really know where we're going and nobody knows who's in charge. Luckily, at Plank of the Week, we've got plenty of people to choose from. And today, I'm delighted to say, I've got two stalwarts, two veterans of Plank of the Week. Russell Quirk is here, our friendly, what do we call you, PR man
PR
of the people,
guru,
PR guru, property expert,
jack of all trades, really.
Jack of all trades. Dawn Neesom, journalist
extraordinaire.
extraordinaire. So, I don't know where we're going to start today, but let's start with Dawn, given that you are the queen of Plank of the Week.
Thank you very much. Right, I am going to go for Chris Bryant.
Chris Bryant. Very popular choice.
Up until yesterday, I wasn't 100% sure who or what it actually was, but evidently it's a Welsh Labour MP for Rhondda.
That's true.
And he has been since 2001.
Former vicar, apparently.
A former Church of England vicar. Got into a bit of trouble with his expenses as an MP as well.
Yes.
And I was working on your colleague, Dan Wootton's show yesterday, and Chris was on there having a debate.
Well, you call it a debate. Was it much of a debate?
No,
having
it
a
wasn't.
go rather than having a debate, I think.
Honestly, I have never heard so much rude, offensive stuff in my life. He came on and he was defending the lockdown, firebreak, whatever we are calling it these days in Wales, by saying it was a good thing, had to be done. And anyone that disagreed with him was either a crackpot or a nutcase.
Yes.
Which is great in these mental health days, isn't it? I'm not sure you can call people nutcases.
Well, apparently it's all right if you don't agree with them and they happen to be not from the left wing. As ever, you can insult as many people as you like if you're a lefty.
Absolutely. And these were all the Great Barrington Agreement scientists who was having a go at saying they were crackpots. They're coming up with a bad stuff.
Well, he called Dan a nutcase.
He called Dan a nutcase. He also called Dan stupid, and I just couldn't believe what I was hearing. And all because people disagree with him.
Yeah.
And then he doubled down on it by lying.
He lied about the comparison in the number of people in hospital, didn't he?
Absolutely.
But it's a tactic that we all see through now, don't we? So ever since the dawn of Brexit back in kind of 2016, where the left started repositioning anybody that was against them in any way, shape or form as, nasty or
racist,
crackpots or whatever. But I think we all see through it now. The public see through that now, don't they? That it's not good enough just to label someone as an idiot or a crackpot, rather than actually having an argument that might actually be based on some data and some facts.
But also the people that he's referring to and calling crackpots are quite eminent medical
they are,
experts.
yeah, I mean,
it'd be one thing if they were crackpots.
Yeah.
But they're actually, very highly qualified.
If you're going to come
Stanford University, Cambridge, Oxford.
Exactly.
I mean, really.
And if you're going to come onto live radio and be that rude and obnoxious to the host and to some of the world's most eminent scientists, at least make sure you've got your facts right.
Yes.
Local hospital, he said, was capacity, never been this much, double what it was last year at 75,000. And actually, it turns out that is what that particular intensive care unit is every year.
Presumably, he's labelling the World Health Organisation as crackpots as well, because they're also against lockdown.
He might have had a point, though, there.
Do you think?
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, the World Health Organisation is a very strange organisation. I mean, you never quite know
they're
what they're
an
going to
eminent
say.
organisation, along with the 12,000 other signatures
absolutely.
of the Barrington
But a bit like Public Health England, right, which was run by people who didn't know anything about public health. The World Health Organisation is also run by people who are basically all appointed by the UN and know absolutely bugger all about actual medicine. They're a kind of administration more than they're a medical organisation, right?
In any case, I got very annoyed with him, so Chris Bryant is definitely a huge prank in my world.
I think that is a very, very good addition. I mean, the funny thing is, he was always quite a chippy character, and we used to get him in the tent of common sense from time to time, and he got very worked up when I said to him at one point, well, I'm paying your salary. He went, no, you're not. I pay tax. I said, yeah, but you don't seem to understand. You work for me. I don't work for you. So therefore, you have to answer the question that I'm putting to you. And when you claim your expenses, I'm paying them.
Yeah, did you mention the £92,000 of expenses?
I didn't really. But I mean, the point is that, what people who work in the public sector don't get is that if it wasn't for the fact that the taxpayers actually fund their salaries, they wouldn't have any money.
There would be no
yes,
public
they pay
sector.
tax, but they wouldn't have a job. They wouldn't have a salary if we didn't subscribe to it. But, he's one of these guys. I've found, actually, quite to my disappointment, that an awful lot of MPs are just not very bright. I mean, he said Dan was stupid, right?
Oh, yeah.
And quite a lot of MPs that I've met, as a result of what we've been doing for the last 2 or 3 years and being down in Westminster an awful lot. I mean, there's some great MPs and some terrific MPs and very intelligent MPs, but there's an awful lot of dross.
Well, this is what I find worrying, and I think we're all realising it now. I think we realised it with Brexit, but I think we're realising it even more now with coronavirus, is that the people that are supposedly in charge, you wouldn't trust them on a bus.
No. You really wouldn't.
No.
And they have no idea, an awful lot of them,
Clueless.
how ordinary people live.
Absolutely
I mean, this is why they
clueless.
bring in things like, let's have a 10 p.m. curfew. You know, it always reminds me of the story my dad told me once of when he was in his youth, and he used to go and draw in courts, you know, because he was a cartoonist, and he used to go and draw, you know, for the paper. And there was a judge reminiscing and remonstrating with some old drunk who had been done for drunken disorderly about the 5th time in a week, you know, and he said, and you know, my dear fellow, you must not have any alcohol at all for the next week, and not even a light sherry before lunch.
As
And this old wino kind of going, all right, and, you know. But I mean, that's what they're like. They have no idea. Russell, who's your first one?
So mine, I'm delighted to announce this one. It's a national treasure, would you believe? And it's the national treasure that is Gary Lineker.
Gary Lineker.
Gary Lineker.
Yes.
The man that has spent goodness knows how many months and years preaching via his 7.7 million Twitter followers. Everything that is woke, everything that is right and best practiced and best endeavours.
Yes.
You must do this, you must do that. And let me just read a few examples.
Yes.
Some of the things that he's said over the last 3 or 4 months about wearing masks.
Oh, this will be good.
In particular. So, this is Gary Lineker on Twitter. Wearing a mask has to be beneficial, even if it saves just one life. Even if it is only a 1% chance of making you safer, you must wear a mask. I can't understand why anyone would object to wearing a mask. It's a painless gesture to ensure that you don't spread the virus to others. And in July, he said, why would anyone object to wearing a mask in a shop?
How does he
it's
know,
not exactly
by the way, all
hardship.
this? I didn't know he was an expert on the respiratory system.
Apparently. So I think what we're getting here is that Gary Lineker thinks that there is no excuse for not wearing a mask, except if it's him in Marks and Spencer's in Barnes
Not
this
wearing
Sunday,
a mask.
having been photographed by somebody. And then, in fairness to him, he didn't somehow deny it and say it was a lookalike, but apparently it was an oversight.
Well, nobody looks like Lineker, do they?
It was an oversight.
I mean, I quite enjoyed somebody on Twitter saying, was it because you can't get one big enough to go over your ears?
Yeah,
you know,
but
which I
how
thought was
many
quite
times
nice.
now have we seen these woke preachers?
Oh, I know.
The likes of Hugh Grant and Emma Thompson and Mr. Crisps himself, Mr. Lineker, telling us what we should and shouldn't do, and then doing exactly the opposite themselves.
And I mean, I don't mind if people go out by mistake. I mean, probably we've all done it. You're about to walk in somewhere and you go, oh, I've forgotten my mask.
It's part of the checklist now, is it? Mask,
you know,
purse,
exactly.
keys.
I mean, one of my kids is now going to FE college on a bus, and I mean, he forgets his mask, despite the fact that I've told him, put one in your bag, put one in your pocket.
Have a spare.
You know, he rings his mum, you know, at least twice a week. Oh, forgot my mask. You know, people do. But he's not going around telling everyone else to wear one.
No, but the irony
which
here
is the problem here.
He actually pictured himself, apparently in April, in a selfie outside the very branch that he's just been caught not wearing a mask, with his mask on, taking a selfie, not 3 or 4 months ago, saying, I'm going to wear a mask, it's the right thing to do, everybody else should follow suit. And then gets pictured in exactly the same place a few months later, not doing what he preaches.
To be fair, Russell, he's got a lot on his mind at the moment. It was obviously on a shopping trip to prepare for the legal immigrants he's got
Yeah,
to
I'm
come and
amazed
stay
he
in his
still
house.
hasn't actually found anyone, though.
No.
But just the one, right? Or maybe he's got his minds on salary negotiations. No, he's just done that. Hasn't he? Just dropped, he's on a mere 1.4 million quid.
Yeah.
Oh, has he gone down?
He's gone down to 1.4 million
Well, he doesn't really need
quid.
the money anymore, does he?
Well,
No, Marks and Sparks is quite expensive, sweetie.
I suppose that's true, yeah. I mean, you wouldn't want to buy their avocados either, because they're very, very expensive.
So, utter hypocrite.
You know, I mean, why doesn't he pop down to Dover, where there's about 100 people arriving
In a
every
coach.
single day?
It can't be that tricky to buy
It
one,
can't be that
No.
hard, can it?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, really. My first one is going to be my Lord Darroch, otherwise known as Kim Darroch, former British ambassador to Washington, D.C., who was sort of disgraced, I think it was towards the end of last year, but my time scale has gone so wrong now that I
Who
don't...
knows?
If
Where
I
are
told
we?
you that I can't remember whether it was December or January, you might let me off. It seems that they're now investigating whether or not an individual civil servant actually leaked his email to a newspaper, because this is the email in which he referred to Donald Trump as inept and an idiot, and, you know, basically slagged off the President of the United States of America. Whatever you think of him, if you're the UK ambassador to the US, you shouldn't really be writing that down, should you? I mean, if you want to have a conversation in a phone call, that's fine. But what makes it worse, and what makes him plank of the week for me, is that it turns out he would have appeared to have been having a liaison with a woman who was not his wife, right? Who was a young, rather glamorous reporter for CNN, who nobody had ever heard of, and I haven't heard of her either, so I'm going to look her name, Michelle Kaczynski, which is a rather nice...
She's very blonde and pretty.
She's,
and
very
looks quite frisky.
comely,
Surprise,
I would
surprise.
say.
Yeah.
Now, this is a woman who apparently, up until this moment, when she met my Lord Darroch, didn't do much for CNN, hadn't really had a story worth a fag end in her entire career, suddenly started revealing all these exclusives about the Trump White House and what was going on. And people were going, It's amazing.
So how
we
could
had
she
no
know all
idea.
this?
You had
Yeah.
these
Got a really good
these
journalist.
contacts that you seem to have inside the White House. It's extraordinary, And then, to add insult to injury, there's a great piece of footage which I found on, because she then became sort of briefly the star of CNN. So they gave her all sorts of jobs. Right? She went off in this, there was a flood apparently somewhere in Maryland, and she went off to do a piece to camera about the flood. And she's in a canoe, right, sitting there, talking about the floodwaters rising all around her. And as she's sitting there, two guys walk past and the water's about up to, their ankles. So she doesn't need to be in the boat. And that was pretty much the end of her career at CNN.
Drop the dead donkey, isn't it?
It really was drop dead donkey time. But I mean, I don't know what's worse, writing down that you think the Trump presidency is inept, or having an affair with a woman who's a journalist to whom you give a load of stories, which are in fact probably official secrets.
Well,
I mean, the guy clearly has no judgment at all.
No.
Well, and without the
What a moron.
the obvious realisation that journalist is probably going to throw him under the bus one day. It's going to happen so that she can
she'll
continue
probably,
with her
now
career.
that the story's come out, she'll probably get a book deal.
Yeah, yeah.
She'll probably write
Yeah.
a book about,
Yeah.
my time with Lord Darragh and the Trump one, and all the places he took me. And then poor old Mrs. Darragh, whoever she is, who I think is, Dominic West style standing by her man, is going to be tortured by some floozy, who was with her husband for a while.
She was married as well, wasn't she?
I think she might have been, yeah.
The said floozy.
Yeah, she may well have been. But, what sort of an idiot? I mean, people were saying at the time, of course, the usual suspects, what a terrible loss to the world, this Lord Darragh, what a fantastic, diplomat that he is, and he's only being, thrown on the fire now by Boris Johnson because he's mates with Trump. Well, apparently not true. He's been thrown on the fire because he's a total plank.
Because he's an idiot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're number two, Dawn.
Plank, right, okay. This is a double act. I'm going for the Brothers Grimm.
Brothers Grimm, I like it.
Yes, Chris Whitty and Patrick Vallance.
Yes.
Chief Medical Officer and Chief Science Officer, as if we didn't know that by now. I mean, you can't escape them, can they?
You really can't.
Doom and doomer. I mean,
Yes.
they are everywhere. And they're not getting a single thing right. And they are at the
Have they got anything right?
No.
I don't think they have.
No, I had to think about that. No, they haven't. Let me think. But they are the centre of the row over the Manchester lockdown and sort of like, what's going on in Wales and what's going on in Scotland. And it's like they just seem to want to lock us all up in our homes.
Inevitably, for the rest of time.
For the rest of time, forever, because there's no end game as far as they're concerned, apart from, if we ignore them, we're all going to die horribly.
Yes.
And they have just not got any, from, the mask issue. Don't wear masks, are no good for you. Now, suddenly, you step outside your front door without a mask on, with the exception of Gary Lineker, obviously. Then you're going to die. And it's like they just can't get anything right. And they're permanently living in this worst case scenario. That graph they came. It wasn't really a graph, it was a prediction type
No,
thing.
I think it wasn't a
cases.
prediction. But they said it wasn't a prediction.
Doubling of cases every 7 days.
Yeah, it was like 50,000 cases.
It went like that,
Yeah,
didn't it?
absolutely. Yeah. And really, we're sort of going like that, aren't we, really?
Well, it's gone up and it's kind of trickled
sort
to a plateau.
levelling off.
hasn't
I
it?
mean,
Yeah.
it depends.
Well, I saw another one today from the Welsh hospital admissions crowd, right? And it's this line that just goes like this from like July, August, September, October, and then November, which hasn't happened yet. It goes like that.
Yeah.
And you go, well, that's the same thing.
Because
Valentine's
And
This
it's
is
slightly
worse.
dotted
I mean,
to
I
make
could
it look
draw
like
that.
it's
I could just go like that.
Yeah, it's this worst case scenario situation. And what I'm really losing patience with now is the fact that I just don't know what to believe anymore, who to believe. The people in March that you thought might have our best interests at heart and we all trusted, I don't believe a word they say now. Because you can do whatever you want with statistics, you can do whatever you want with the science and use it to...
And they've lost, as some people would say, the dressing room, I think. I don't think anyone really who is sensible now looks at what they say without at least some scepticism.
But what's very odd is that the government have kind of pinned their colours to the Vallance and Whitty mask.
Exactly, this is the
without
problem.
thinking or talking to or seemingly understanding any other point of view.
No.
So, the Whitty Vallance prophecies, their opinion, their standpoint seems to be absolutely gospel, yet we do have the Barrington Declaration and the World Health Organisation and others saying the absolute opposite.
But they've also admitted, haven't they, that they said certain things, and that graph in particular they issued to scare people into behaving the way they wanted them.
Like we want you to behave.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry.
But I guess if you're Vallance and Whitty and you're paid by the public purse predominantly, then lockdown doesn't affect you. The economy crashing and burning doesn't affect you.
It doesn't affect you
so
because...
if you're in a position, I guess, where you would be seen to have to take some element of responsibility in the future, let's say it does all go wrong, that chance that it might, better to be safe than sorry. But of course, the flip side
it's
of
not
that,
safe,
the
though.
problem
It's not safe.
is that it kills the country.
There's an awful lot of sorry people.
Kills the economy.
Right.
You know,
I mean,
there's
the
already
facts
people
that came out today of the non-COVID related deaths that have happened in the home since March.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
seen it
they're
in
all up
Wales.
25%, 30%, 40%.
Dementia, females with dementia over 70%.
Yeah.
I think prostate cancer something like 56% because people aren't getting treatment.
But that's
they
without
can't
the
go to
mental
hospitals.
health issues.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well-
I suspect there'll be more people would die of suicide in Wales than would die of coronavirus.
Yeah, I know, it's shocking, absolutely shocking.
The problem with Sage, just quickly, and Whitty and Vallance, is there's no one on Sage who is representing the ordinary GPs,
No.
the people that are seeing what's going on the ground. There's no one, as you say, working in mental health, who's saying, look, people are going to start killing themselves.
Well, no one's thinking about the other consequences.
No.
It's also fragmenting, and you mentioned Brexit before, in the way that the Brexit argument fragmented,
Polarised, yeah.
because last, I think it was last Monday or the one before, where a bunch of Sage scientists went to the FT, basically leaked to the FT, because they obviously thought that Whitty and Vallance weren't getting anywhere with Boris, because they want a full lockdown, he won't give it to them. So I know, we'll go to the most lefty kind of serious newspaper in the world, and that's now the FT, I'm afraid. It used to be, a proper city, Tory paper. Now it's just a lefty rag, really. And they go to them and give them all this info because they want to undermine the Prime Minister. I'm sorry, that's not what you should be doing.
Trying to look after their backsides and throwing us under the bus.
Yeah, I know.
It's just not
shocking.
Yeah.
Well, it's a good one, though. Russell, you're second.
So I'm afraid continuing the coronavirus theme and the theme of hypocrisy.
Hard to get away from it.
It is,
Well,
isn't it?
it
What
is,
else
and
there?
particularly where there's so many planks in positions of power and authority that keep kind of doing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
So my second nomination is Matt Hancock.
Oh, love
Right.
Matt.
Did I pronounce that right?
You did.
And,
Sometimes
You can leave the
people,
hand bit off.
sometimes people struggle with that.
yeah, and for two reasons, really. Obviously, it's been fairly well versed over the weekend that he may or may not have overextended his stay in a parliamentary bar past 10 p.m.
Oh, yes.
on October the 5th.
Yeah.
He hasn't denied it, apparently. He's just refused to ask
He
to
was
answer
also
the question.
pictured not wearing a mask,
Not
but in
wearing
a
a mask,
car.
And that's my second. That's my
Right?
second. So
I
not,
didn't really mind that, though. He's in a car, isn't he?
Well, but
But
I
you have to if you get
I
an
do
Uber.
mind it.
Yeah.
See, I
Yeah.
mind it. And the reason
Yeah.
I mind it is he's the man making the rules.
Yeah.
He's the man that stands up and says, I'm ever so sorry, for all sorts of reasons, clinically, we're going to impose a 10 p.m. curfew.
Yeah.
Boris Johnson, not 48 hours ago, says all ministerial cars are equipped with masks and ministers should wear them to lead by example.
Yeah.
24 hours later, Matt Hancock, having just recovered just from this whole Commons bar debacle, is pictured pulling up at a department, knowing there's a load of photographers there, without a bloody mask
Yes.
on. What
Grinning.
an utter cretin.
I know,
Yeah.
you do wonder what's going through their minds, don't
What,
you?
is it arrogance or stupidity or both, I wonder?
I think it's a bit of both.
I think of it
you know?
both. In Matt Hancock's
Because you
case,
can't tell
possibly.
me that. I mean, it's one thing Gary Lineker forgets his mask. If you're the health secretary, you don't forget your mask.
No.
Pretty fundamental. Or at least employ someone to kind of, be on your shoulders
Yeah,
saying, don't
I
forget
mean,
your
we
mask.
have to wear a mask to go in and out of the lobby of
Yeah.
this building, right?
Yeah.
I don't forget to put it on, ever. As I'm walking in, I put it on. As I'm going to walk out of this studio, I'll put it on to go
But
out, and then I'll
is
take it off again.
Any wonder then the government have to stand up and say, you lot aren't abiding by the rules? Well, of course
Well,
not. You lot aren't abiding by the rules.
Well, of course, and that's why people are fed up to the back teeth, and they're also not, as you say, sort of gilded by some nice public sector salary and expenses, which they don't, which they know they'll get no matter what.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shocking. Well, I'm going to go off-piste, if you don't mind me saying that, on this one, because I'm not going to do coronavirus on my second one, and it's Ellie Harrison, who's the host of Country File, or one of the many hosts of Country File. She's the sort of blonde, effervescent one, if you like. I hate Country File. It's a bit like Channel 4 News. I find it compelling watching because I hate it so much. I have to keep watching it just because I'm kind of going...
It's got an audience of
what
about
has this
10,
got-
I suspect,
What's,
isn't it?
well,
It's quite popular.
Is
It
Yeah.
probably is quite popular because
Yeah.
it's
Comfort
Sunday
TV.
night, isn't
It's
it?
gentle Sunday night escapism.
But the trouble is, right, like a lot of these BBC scenarios, I'm asking the question, what are you doing? You know, they had a whole piece last Sunday about Victorian cycling for women, right? Now, call me old-fashioned. I don't think that's got much to do with the countryside, right? And
I don't think it's got much to do with anything.
no, they managed to find this woman who was making Victorian dresses as they were worn by women who cycled in Victorian times.
Right.
And the presenter went and met them, put the thing on, and you're kind of going, I mean, you're a cyclist, right? And apparently it was a very male-dominated preserve.
It was, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I thought it was a
but
male-dominated preserve until about 2 years ago, to be honest, because you mostly see blokes in their old Lycra cycling
It still
around
is a very
London, you know.
male-dominated preserve. But
Yeah,
I mean,
and I do hate cyclists, by the way. Just make sure you don't forget that.
Apart from me, of course,
Yeah, apart
luckily.
from you, no, because you're fine. But Ellie Harrison came out a couple of days ago, I suppose, to say something that had been said once before in Country File, that the countryside is actually racist.
Oh God, yeah.
The
No, I remember that,
countryside
yeah.
is
Yeah.
racist. Now, you live in probably a bit of rural countryside-ish.
Rural Essex.
Dawn's a city girl. I get away to the countryside at the weekends. You know, the countryside cannot be racist, okay? Anybody can go to the countryside.
Yeah.
Anybody can walk in a field. Anybody can climb over a stile.
And what's her
You can even
justification?
cycle in the countryside if you wish.
You can.
And what's her justification for it being racist?
Well, she says there's a lot of work to do. I presume what she means is there's not that many people from ethnic minorities that live in the countryside.
Yeah.
Now, there's a pretty good reason for that. Most of the work is in London or in Manchester or in Birmingham or in Leeds. You know, most of the work that people do when they come from another country to live here or are born here because they happen to be members of an ethnic minority, it happens to be in sort of more concentrated in the cities, right? Now, you could say, well, why did not more people from the black and minority ethnic population live in the countryside? Because there's no work there.
But it doesn't mean they can't.
It doesn't mean they can't.
And
They're
I
not
guess
prohibited.
But I guess if she objects to it so much, why is she working on a country-related program? She should resign immediately and protest.
Well, I mean, Countryfile
Which
is
is
a very...
racist. It's Countryfile by its very nature.
She
is
should
racist
resign
then.
immediately.
It's a racist
Well,
title.
Countryfile is one, a racist show. Also, there's hardly anybody who's not white on it. Very
got a
rarely do you go...
couple, haven't
when
they,
they go... Well, yeah, but when they go
diverse.
to, you know, the sort of the Hereford sheep dip or whatever it is they're covering, you know, the Hereford population is pretty white.
Yeah.
Most of the farming community is pretty white. It doesn't make it racist. It just happens to be
It
white.
just-
That happens to be the demographics.
It just happens to be the demographic. So she's a plank of the week for me, and you know, I make no apology for it. But at least it's not
good
corona
At
related.
least it's not coronavirus.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
And nor's mine.
So your final one.
And nor's mine. Mine is Woke Disney.
Woke Disney.
Wow,
I like it.
absolutely. This is, it's not exactly Walt Disney personally, but it's the Disney Plus streaming channel who are responsible for streaming all the lovely old fashioned, you know, like Dumbo, like Snow White, like Jungle Book, Peter Pan.
Yes.
They stream all the old classics that kids have loved for generations.
Yes.
And now, before they stream each film, they are putting a really heavy-handed warning out that this is wrong, kids. You shouldn't be watching this. This is racist. This is homophobic.
What, on their
this
own
is
channel?
transphobic. On their own channel. Just because these films were made sort of like, 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Those attitudes
Well,
were
Dumbo
wrong.
was in like the 60s, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's outrageous because it's presumably taking the mickey out of people with big ears.
Yeah.
It's just outrageous.
Well,
It is shocking.
But I mean, Dumbo is racist because they have singing crows.
Yes. Okay.
Peter Pan was racist because the Lost Boys wore feathered headdresses, so
Oh, right.
like Native Americans.
Okay. Right.
So I guess Aladdin was a misogynist, was he?
Yeah, absolutely.
Probably.
And don't get me started on Cinderella.
Yeah.
It's like
Can you actually have, characters which are given the sort of characteristics of real people if their cartoons are not actually real? I mean, like there was no Aladdin, was there?
No, it's
Or have
all
I got that
fictitious.
wrong?
But you obviously can't portray Aladdin as any sort of Asian ethnic stereotype because he obviously was.
Yes.
I mean, so this is the
It's
problem.
bad news for the king and I, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, it's like, and the Aristocats as well.
Yes.
The Siamese cats.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I went to see that with
It's
my
great.
auntie from
It's a
Paisley.
Great song, absolutely. We've all got childhood memories of that.
Yeah.
We can all sing that song. We're
Yeah.
not going to do it now, but we can all sing it. And that you can't. That's a racist stereotype.
Really?
But this is the warning that flashes up, apparently, doesn't it?
Yeah,
that
and
says
it's really heavy.
this film is not representative of
Yes.
today's
Yeah.
values,
Right.
Yeah.
and please bear in mind
Yeah.
that it was made based on values of the past.
It's a- so-
Like a 5-year-old understands that.
Well, exactly. And you know what really annoys me, Russell, with this? It's like little kids at the moment especially need escapism. They need a fancy world. I mean, it's tough for everybody. For little kids at the moment, childhood should be the best days of your life. And not only are they sort of like, they can't see their school friends, they can't go to school, or if someone sneezes, they're all sent home again. They're very confused. Everyone's wandering around in masks. So they sit down and watch some escapism on telly, and they're getting a lecture, which they won't
Maybe you could
understand.
somehow do it so that they don't see the start of the film or something, so they don't see the warning. Because I put on, there was some old, that weird old TV station that you get, which is called
BBC.
Talking Pictures or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Pathé or something. Is it Pathé?
It's not Pathé, but I think it's called Talking Pictures. They've always got old films on, but somehow it was on. Because I don't really watch that much TV. It
4
kind
out
of,
of 5,
default thing. Some show came on that I'd never heard of, right? But obviously from the 80s, I think I must have been in America, called Bogner. Did you ever remember a show called Bogner? And it was about this guy. It was awful, absolutely terrible show. I couldn't work. It was so bad I couldn't work out if it was a comedy or not. Right? And it was about this guy who worked for the Department of Trade. And the opening scene was somebody's dogs being poisoned, right, by some mad dog poisoner. But it said before that came on, please be aware this is a show that was made at a time when values and attitudes to society were very different. I didn't wait till the end.
In the end, they often now, of course, they play the if you have been affected by the issues raised in this programme.
No,
you know,
but
so
they do that on all the soaps.
Yes.
They do that on all the soaps now. I mean, I realise, having just said that, what I just said, I may have to clarify, because you would expect if it was dogs being poisoned, it wasn't a comedy, but it might have been. You literally couldn't tell.
But there's comedy in everything.
It was one of those awful shows that they made in the 80s.
Do we really think that 7-year-old girls watching Fireman Sam, as an example, watch it and think, oh, damn, I can't be a fireman.
I can't be a
because
fireman.
it's only for boys.
Yeah, Fireman Sam's Welsh as well, so presumably he can't go out and put any fires out now because he's got to stay home.
He's been locked down.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
No chance.
But, you know, if Disney...
Tony Pandy.
If Disney really cared about being woke, they would take these films off the channel completely and then lose a lot of money.
Yeah, either get rid of them or just allow them to be.
Yeah, just allow little kids to be little kids and enjoy them.
Yeah, exactly. Very
I agree.
Good. Very well said. Russell.
So my last one, and I hate to be political again, but we are surrounded by it, is the entire opposition front bench. It is Her Majesty's opposition.
Right.
But my point of nominating them, are they in opposition?
Right.
So, you know, we've had Keir Starmer since he was elected as leader of the Labour Party, kind of sit back, do nothing, say nothing. Apart from all of a sudden, of course, a week ago he chirped up saying that he insisted that we should have this 2-week circuit breaker lockdown. And that was nothing more than political opportunism. He's goal hanging, effectively, waiting for the government to make more and more mistakes. And I kind of get the philosophy that if you're in opposition, you can hang back and just let the government kind of defeat themselves. But actually, I think, you know, as a member of the electorate, I think the opposition should continually challenge and stand up. But my issue with the whole front bench is that around the kind of 24 to 48 hours where Keir Starmer made that announcement with regard to him wanting this 2-week circuit breaker lockdown, you've had, in that time, you've had the likes of Rachel Reeves, who immediately went onto television, and within 15 seconds of the interview, in her interview, she went from insisting on a 2-week lockdown to a 2 to 3 week lockdown to a 28-day lockdown.
Really?
So literally moved her position 3 times in 15 seconds. And, you know, you've then had today, of all days, Sadiq Khan breaking with the whole Labour Party philosophy, the whole message. And he, of all people, that was arguing for the 10 p.m. curfew to be imposed 2 weeks ago, today apparently, literally half an hour ago, has said that he now wants the 10 p.m. curfew to be lifted because it will help the hospitality sector.
Well, he's right about that.
Well,
it's the first thing he's got right, in fact, in my memory of it.
He is.
But he's been arguing for it for ages.
But as a Labour Party, they are all over the place.
They are.
They're not
opposition. Maybe he's been talking to his mate Andy Burnham, because they obviously think they're operating some kind of pincer move.
Andy Burnham has just become the Czech cashier-in-chief, hasn't he? Because all Andy Burnham now stands for is effectively blackmailing the government because he wants another 20, 40, 50 million quid. And as we sit here recording this now, that particular debate, that particular agreement is ongoing. But it's now become all about the money. But Burnham, of course, is the opposite to Starmer and Reeves and Khan, saying he doesn't want any lockdown at all.
Well, let's face it,
bloody minds
when Starmer called for the 2-week circuit breaker, which I hate as a phrase, I don't know where fire break came
even
from.
Worse,
where did that come from? And then literally 2 hours before Starmer had said we want a 2-week lockdown, Ashworth, is the Shadow Health guy, had said that would be a disaster. So they changed in 2 hours. They changed the policy.
They are all over the place.
They really are.
They're no opposition at all, and therefore I think they're worthy nominations.
Are you nominating the Labour Party?
The Labour Party and particularly the opposition front bench.
That works for me. Well, I can't decide because I've got 2 possibilities as my final one. I think one is the Liverpool police, right? Because of the way they reacted to that bloke who wanted to keep his gym open. You know. Because he's now been crowdfunded to the tune of something like 50,000 quid. Now, I'm told, I don't know if this is true, that he can't use that fund to actually pay the fines, but he can use it to fight the fines in a court. So there's some kind of, you know, nicety about that. But I mean, if you can't fine someone, they've got the money to keep paying the fine. I don't know what you can do, but what you shouldn't do is turn up with sort of armed officers to a place where people are working out.
Lots of
about 7 or 8 of them, I think, all armed to the teeth. And you're kind of going, what's going on? I mean, I was joking earlier on today to somebody in Manchester who rang in, and I said, you know, the tank's rolling through the streets yet. But I mean, you wouldn't actually be that surprised if something like that started happening, you know? The other one I was going to go for was Greta Thunberg for releasing a movie when all the cinemas have just been shut down. But I think I'll leave her alone for this one, just because I think
she'll
Liverpool
definitely
police,
pop up again.
I think she might.
Well, she's now 17, right? So technically speaking, definitely no longer a child. So when people go, oh, you shouldn't be able to go at her, she's just a child. Well, she's now 17 actually, and she's made a movie.
But she still looks like she's 12.
Well, that's not my fault.
Which is frankly weird.
Well, I still look like I'm 35, but nobody gives me a hard time about it.
I think he's talking about his IQ.
Feel free to interject at any time.
No, that's fine.
It's okay.
You just carry on.
Listen, I've always looked a lot younger than I really am.
But I wonder
there
in
we are.
Liverpool, to your point, what else was going on whilst all those officers were sitting there at the gym with their arms folded?
This is the point.
The car theft, the stabbings, and all the other problems,
drug business,
and issues.
I mean, the
of
drug
crime
business in this
across
country
the city.
is a multi-billion-pound business, right? It's one of the few businesses I would imagine that hasn't been at all affected by COVID-19.
Oh, absolutely. Well,
right? Because the police are all doing something else.
Yeah, the London borough I live in has got one of the worst crime and drug problems in the whole of the capital. Right. And the first thing I heard on the radio the other day was, don't be surprised in this part of London if you see more armed police on the streets. We are just there to protect you from coronavirus. I said, what about the kids stabbing each other down the road?
Right. Also, why do you need armed police to protect you from coronavirus?
But that said, there's only 4 police forces in the entire country have fined anyone for not wearing a mask.
Yeah.
So what are they doing? So on the one hand, they're oppressing people around the whole coronavirus rules and regulations as they change every 10 seconds. But at the other end, it looks like the data show they're not actually doing anything in terms of bringing people to task.
You can get nicked for talking to your neighbour over the garden fence, but you can't get nicked for stabbing somebody in the street.
No, but try ringing them.
Some
try ringing them if you have a burglary, and they might get back to you in a few days' time.
Here's a crime reference number.
Right.
We've got dog walkers going around.
I was told, and this is only anecdotal because I can't prove it, it was somebody on social media that sent me a message to say that they tried to come into London on Friday night from Maidstone, and they were prevented from getting on the train by the police because they said you haven't got good enough reason for going. It's only essential travel.
Surely.
I don't think they can.
No.
But I mean, they can, I think. I mean, if you're now in tier 2, the word is that you can't travel.
It's advisory.
It's advisory, you're not meant to.
But it doesn't tell you that you can't.
No.
But you're not supposed to.
It's advisory.
I mean, it's weird, isn't it?
It's advisory.
It's
but
like
overzealous policing, which we have seen. We
and
saw
you can't travel
previous
to Liverpool
lockdown.
for the weekend, I'm afraid. So, that's off now because it's in
tier
3.
I used to travel to Liverpool a lot because we used to follow West Ham up there away games, and it's like, we always lost.
Not anymore.
No.
Well, there we are. So we've got the 9.
Yep.
Now we're going to carry one over from last week.
Oh.
Not quite sure who that will be. We always do that.
Right.
But that's completely at my discretion.
You're just making this up as you go along.
No, I always do it.
He's allowed to.
Absolutely.
As it may not have passed your notice. We've only got 9. It's always a top 10 list, right? So I carry one over.
Maths wasn't my strong
Makes
point.
perfect sense. So why don't you pick your favourite one of Russell's and we'll go like that. So Russell, tell us your 3.
So in order, Gary Lineker,
yeah.
Matt Hancock, and Her Majesty's Opposition.
Oh God, it's tough, isn't it? I mean, as much as I loathe Matt Hancock on every level of loathing.
Mad Hancock, I like it.
Yeah, see what I did there?
That's a movie.
Tabloid journalist.
Like it.
I am going to go for Mr. Lineker because hypocrisy is the world's worst thing.
Yeah. It really is.
Yeah, I'm going to go for
And
Gary.
he's not been in it for a while. I think that's good.
No, so and Matt's in it every week, isn't he? Really? So.
Well, funnily enough, he's not as high up the list as you would have expected him to be.
Okay, next time.
But next time, he'll still be in the list this time though.
Yep.
So you're choosing my favourite, Lord Darragh, Ellie Harrison, and Liverpool Police.
I think Liverpool Police have to win it for me.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, completely disproportionate and inappropriate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's very decisive. All right, I'm going to pick yours, Dawn. So what were your 3 again?
Chris Bryant, the Brothers Grimm, and Walt Disney.
It's got to be Chris Bryant, isn't it?
Okay, shoe-in.
It's got to
Absolutely
be.
shoe-in.
Sorry, Chris.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So Chris Bryant, Liverpool Police,
And Gary Lineker.
and Gary Lineker. That's not bad. Threesome. It's
pretty good.
Not bad.
It's pretty tough, though.
So now we used to sort of try and whittle it down and take one away, but we don't really do that anymore. Instead we just kind of sit like grown-ups and discuss for a couple of
like
minutes.
grown-ups, Dawn.
I know
Like
that's
grown-ups.
hard for you guys, but I would tend to go for Chris Bryant as number 1. Simply because very much conduct. I mean, if you had a sort of yellow card for conduct unbecoming a member of Parliament, I think calling a national radio host and columnist
An idiot.
a nutcase,
A nutcase
and an idiot,
and saying very stupid.
and calling eminent scientists crackpots. I think that's outrageous. In fact, if I was Sir Keir Starmer, I'd be giving him a strong talking to.
Yeah.
Saying you don't represent the Labour, because I actually put a tweet out saying same old Labour Party, just slag off anyone that doesn't agree with you.
And
and they're not supposed to. They're supposed to be the kinder, gentler Labour Party now, aren't they?
Hashtag be kind, and not even knowing what it's talking about.
No.
If it had actually had a fact and been horrible and rude and nasty, maybe, but he didn't even know what he was talking
But also,
about.
if Dan had been belligerent, which he wasn't,
No, he wasn't,
He was
no.
very calm. If Dan had been saying things which were untrue, which he didn't.
He didn't, not at all.
You know, he was simply stating fact and asking questions.
Yeah, which is
and he
his
was
job.
suddenly branded some kind of maniac.
Why would Chris Bryant go on that show with that argumentative, I'm just going to be an obnoxious idiot
I know.
attitude?
Well, I mean, I don't suppose he was at lunch before that. I don't know whether that would be the case. I don't think so. I don't think he particularly partakes of the...
Well, yeah,
So my
The
slight
demon
challenge
drink.
is, I think, look, I'm not suggesting that Chris Bryant isn't a worthy winner, but Gary Lineker is definitely up there. I mean, given the stick that he's given people and the preaching and the kind of self-righteousness.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I mean, number 2 is still a pretty good place to be.
Yeah, yeah.
And
You
I'm
know.
sure there'll be other opportunities for Gary.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I mean, don't forget, you know, we're still watching him to see when he appoints his new house guest. You know,
Yeah, that'd be nice.
maybe he's going to do it for Christmas. Maybe he's waiting for
Lovely.
You know,
Maybe though he's going to use the new lockdown rules, whatever level tier
Oh,
we're
yeah.
at, to say I can't have anyone else in my house. See,
that's
you
very
know.
possible.
Yeah.
Well, I would go with that. Liverpool Police 3, Gary
Happy with
Lineker
that.
2, and Chris Bryant. I mean, Chris Bryant, he'll be really, really regretting coming on Talk Radio.
Well, I do hope that he comes on again because it's very entertaining.
I
even
do
though
hope
he
he will.
It was. I was honestly shocked. I mean, I was, you know,
I was.
working
Well,
with
do you know,
Dan,
the first- yeah.
and it's like, you know, and Dan's so good at what he does, and he was being polite, and it was like, why are you saying that? Why are you
Yeah.
doing that?
But the other question is, how does an MP that gets elected by the majority, but gets elected to represent all of their constituents, how does Chris Bryant now represent those that don't agree with him? I mean, is he going to stand in his surgery
And there's
in the
plenty of
future
people in
and
Wales.
slag them off and just say, no, Mrs. Smith, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I don't agree
You're
with
a
you, you're an idiot,
crackpot.
you're a
You're an
crackpot.
idiot, yeah.
It's got
Nutcase.
a huge
But
majority
maybe
as well.
he knows
Yes.
he's not going to stand again.
But can
and,
I just finish by thanking you personally, Mike, for that picture you put on Twitter?
Ah, yes,
for
we
me
haven't
this
mentioned that.
morning. No,
Yes.
thank you.
Well,
I
this is
saw that first
unfortunately
thing
Sorry,
what
this
which is
morning.
this? Sorry, I've missed this.
Chris Bryant in his underpants.
Oh, really?
Have you not seen it?
No.
It was talking about having a huge majority that reminded me, and he obviously hasn't got a huge majority in any way, shape, or form.
The idea is that he put it out when he was quite a bit younger.
So this is actually a picture of
it's
Chris
an
Bryant in his
actual
underpants?
selfie.
Not something that Dawn's
No,
not
no,
up
no.
in Photoshop.
Well, listen,
In a
I
spare
wouldn't
time.
go anywhere near
No,
any
no,
of that
I wouldn't
if I
do
were
that.
you. No, let's not think about that. No, this is a genuine picture which was published, I think, by one of the tabloids many years ago.
It was 2003,
There you
and
go.
it was on Gaydar. He
Yes.
posted it because it was obviously a bit lonely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's now coming back to haunt him.
Well, I'm
thankfully.
afraid so, because that's the way things
That's
tend to
kind of
go.
what the internet does, right?
And
It's-
I'm afraid that until that moment, I was not blocked by Chris Bryant. But then
Oh,
when
you've
I
been blocked, haven't
He's
you?
blocked
Yeah, I
me
know.
because I posted a picture of him in his underpants.
Funny
I
enough,
mean,
yes.
it's his picture
That he took.
That he took.
That was one of those.
You know,
selfies.
what's
And
wrong with
but
it?
The worst thing about that picture wasn't the underpants, which were slightly grey and baggy.
No.
It was the bathroom shelf in the background.
Some people have
don't
drawn
look too
attention.
close. Just
yeah, no,
don't.
some
I
people
think that
have
sums up
drawn
what you were
attention.
saying just now. Some MPs are just not very bright.
No.
are they?
Not very bright
No,
at
no,
all.
no,
You know,
no,
and
no.
for anybody who's thinking about becoming an MP, don't post any pictures of yourself in your underwear before you become one, or while you are one.
Or while you are
Or
one.
just don't do it.
Or at any point
Just
ever
don't.
in
I
your
mean,
career,
yeah.
no matter who you are.
Yeah, just don't do it.
No,
So, Chris
no.
Bryant, well done. Absolute brilliant plank of the weekery. You have totally stolen the show. And we'll see you at some point again, I'm sure, next time we're in Westminster.
Go, Chris.
But Dawn Neesom, thank you very much.
Thank
Russell
you.
Quirk, thank you very
Pleasure.
much. We'll have more planks next week.